At this time, I'd like to call the Brookline School Board meeting on Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 to order. Tonight is our annual reorganization meeting. Very shortly, I will ask the board to nominate members to become chair of the school board. Once I have a nomination, I will ask for a second. Once I have a nomination and a second, I will call for discussion. Once discussion is concluded, I will call for a vote. If the candidate put forth passes, they will take over the meeting and elect a vice chair and a secretary. If the candidate put forth is not elected, we'll repeat the process until the chair is elected. Are there any questions on that? Okay, at this time, I will call for nominations.
Kelly Zacher, I would like to nominate Ken Haig for chair of the Brookline School Board.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a nomination and a second. Do I have any discussion? Seeing none? Oh, no, go ahead. I'm not many times.
I was just going to say that Ken, being the most senior person on the board and having successfully led the board for the last 2 years?
2 or 3, I'm not sure.
2 or
what it
3
is,
years. I think it's a great opportunity for him to lead once again and give the opportunity to some of us newer members who aren't as new as we'd like to say we are anymore, the opportunity to learn. And so I'm grateful that he is willing to accept the nomination one more time.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of Ken Haig for chairman, please signal. 5-0. I turn it over to you, Ken.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we are now looking for nominations for vice chair, and I'd be happy to make one. I'll nominate Colleen Mikovic for vice chair. We need a second if
second
anyone's
that.
interested. Okay.
We're all sitting
Very
good.
Another cliffhanger. All right. Any discussion with that? Colleen, I think you're interested in supporting a role? Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor? You might want to vote too. All right, 5-0, or you can abstain if you want. 5-0. Thank you, Colleen. All right, and now we will move on to a secretary role. So, is there anyone interested in being the secretary? If not, I would love to nominate someone down on that end of the table if they're interested.
You're going to default to me, aren't you?
I would put beauty over brains.
I'm not sure how that, I can't even say who it's going to be now, so I'll be quiet.
Wow.
It's simple, it's easy. I didn't do it.
Well, I'll take care of this. I'll nominate Tracy Perry.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Sure.
There we go, seconded by Colleen. Any discussion around that? So Dawn does a great job with 98% of secretary duties, to be honest. It's just the non-public stuff where we'll need your support.
And I will walk you through the first few meetings, which we do for every new secretary.
Seriously though, Tracy, are you interested in
Yeah,
doing
you
it?
don't
Because
have
if
to.
you're not, I will nominate myself.
No, I'm happy to do it. Thank
Are
you.
you sure?
I just figured I'd move the cliffhanger along a little bit.
Sure.
You
No,
know.
I will do it. Thank you.
Okay, let's put it to a vote then. All those in favor? 5-0, very good. Thank you,
Just so
Trish.
you know, that might mean you're open for governing board secretary, which is worse.
And
you.
that's what happens. Wait, that's called karma right there.
Yeah,
That's
I got
what
to,
that
I got to do that once. That was a good time. Yeah. All right. So we have some other things that we have to look at too, but the other piece that we need to identify are 2 signers of the manifests. And I would love to nominate both of you, if that's okay. So Allison and Tracy, were you willing to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
So that we typically do to the newer members too, because you get to see the expense and all the different expenses that come across, and that will make sense when we do revenue expense and things like that. Okay, great.
Do you have an alternate?
I'll be the alternate.
Okay.
I didn't mind doing that. I'm on email. a
Yeah,
lot, Jen.
Colleen, all right, so that sounds, Colleen will be alternate, thank you.
Okay.
I've been an alternate in the past too, if needed, so, all right. Okay, so then we have a couple other committees, the School District Policy Committee, and I would kind of lump that with maybe the SAU Governing Board Policy Committee, so that's one. I'll stop there real quick. Kelly, are you interested in?
I would really like
Yeah,
to.
I thought so.
Thank you.
Okay, is everyone on board with that then? Okay, so Kelly will be our policy. Then we have Finance Committee, which is for the Brookline Finance Committee, and then a SAU Governing Board Budget Committee, which we try to lump oftentimes together, if anyone's interested in that. I'll keep rattling them all off while we're talking. There's a Teacher Luncheon Committee that's early at the start of the year and supports when the teachers are coming back. And the Superintendent Performance Evaluation Committee. So I think there's a couple opportunities. I would say we'd keep the budget and finance together if you're interested in that.
I would like to do, if it doesn't fall to the board, to the chair, which I understand sometimes it has been, the Superintendent Performance Evaluation Committee again, just because I feel like, there was a lot to learn.
Mhm.
And I would like the opportunity to do that again, if.
That's great with
that's
me.
okay.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Kelly. All right, so now we have Budget Finance Committee and Teacher Luncheon, if anyone's interested in those. So are you willing to do the SAU Budget Committee and the Brookline Finance Committee to support both of those?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then Teacher Luncheon, I've never done that. I'm not sure what goes into it, to be honest. I don't know, has anyone done it on this
I was
group?
listed on that this year, but I'd never heard about it, so I don't know if I.
So it's really just the school board organizing a luncheon for the teachers in back-to-school days.
And pretty much it's been catered.
Oh.
So it's just a matter of,
Making the
You know,
calls.
I'm glad I didn't forget a luncheon. for
yeah,
teachers.
just calling around to find out what vendor you'd like to use, and then just placing the order, it's just charged to the school board's
And getting
expense account.
paperwork,
Paper
paper plates and
plating
things like that, yeah.
I mean, I can do that, that would be, in attending, I assume, or
Okay.
second
Preferred.
Yeah, I mean, we're all there, so it's, the attending is not as
necessary.
critical.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
If it worked on a day
Yeah,
that
I-
was convenient for
that's-
you, right.
Okay, all right.
Are you willing to do that, Colleen?
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
great, thanks. That is an area that's not something that I'm real strong at, so I would love not to.
Well, I never said I was trying.
Calling around for places to eat is not my favorite thing. All right, thank you. Great. So I think we've covered all the committee appointments then. So thank you, everyone, for volunteering and supporting the different pieces there. I think we can move over are there any agenda adjustments that we need to identify?
I don't have any.
Okay, great. Everyone good on the board too? Okay. All right, so let's move over to correspondence, resignations, retirements, and nominations.
I have a resignation to start the evening. Dear Mr. Molinari, I am writing this letter to share that my family will be relocating at the end of the school year. Therefore, I will be resigning from my position at RMS Math Specialist when the current school year ends. My last day at RMS will be June 30th, 2023. I am grateful for the opportunities I've had to serve the students, staff, and families at RMMS. Please know how much I appreciate the latitude that you have given me over the past several years to work with students of all abilities in a variety of different ways. I wish the students, staff, and families of RMMS all the best as I move forward. Sincerely, Lisa Winters.
Okay. So I will make a motion to accept the resignation of Lisa Winters as math specialist at the end of the school year with an effective date of June 30th, 2023.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you to Lisa. My
Good.
daughter looks forward to working with her every couple of weeks that she does get to work with her, and she does a fantastic job making math more fun and interesting than I personally think it is. So that's a real loss.
Yeah.
So, but my daughter loves math because of her. So,
Thank you.
but I
Yep.
accept her resignation. and
Thank
wish
you
her
for your
well.
service. We
Yes.
certainly echo your comments there. Okay, all those in favor? 5-0.
I have two nominations. We'll take them one at a time. The first one is for grade 5. It's Melissa Palmer. She has her bachelor's in elementary ed and sociology from Bridgewater State and her master's in elementary ed from Bridgewater State as well. She'll be joining us, so she's presently with us, but as you know, she has been an interim, so this is her permanent position, with her master's degree at step 11 for $65,760. So I need a motion to accept Melissa.
65,000.
760.
760, thank you. Okay, got it. All right, so,
I'll make a motion to accept that nomination.
I'll second.
I'm going to just say the Melissa Palmer, grade 5, master step 11, 65,760 is your motion.
Oh, thank you.
That's why I have to write
Oh.
feverishly. That's why I looked at you funny. Okay, and then, who seconded Kelly? There we go. Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
The second one is Melissa Enulat, Ennulat, for Dawn at Home. She'll be a kindergarten teacher at RMMS. She has her bachelor's in music from UMass Amherst and her master's in early child education from Merrimack College. She'll be at master's step 3 for $51,911.
Okay, so make a motion to accept superintendent's nomination of Melissa Enulat for the position of kindergarten teacher at RMMS at a master's step 11, salary $51,911.
I think it was master's step 3.
Master step 3,
Correct.
51,000, I looked up one, yep. Master step 3, 51,911.
That's correct.
And Kelly, it sounds like you're seconding?
I will
All
second
right.
that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0, very good, thank you.
Nice to have a kindergarten teacher with a degree in music.
I smiled when he read that.
Mhm. That's it for correspondence, resignations, retirements, and nominations.
Thank you. Okay, so we are on to approval of minutes. So the three of us are going to have to vote on these since you two were not formally on the board. Okay, so the first is February 22nd, 2023, to accept as presented. Need a second?
I'll second that.
Very good. All in favor? 3, opposed, abstain? There we go. Very good. 302. All right. The next is the March 29th meeting. I don't think we can have you vote here because I don't think you were officially board members then either. So the following amendment was offered, page 5, line 30, September 4th should be replaced with October 5th. So I'll make a motion to accept as amended.
I'll second it.
Second, all in favor? 3, opposed, abstain, 2, thank you. And then similarly, non-public on March 29th, I'll make a motion to accept as presented.
Second?
Second, all in favor? 3, opposed, abstain, 2, thank you. All right, great. So that brings us over to our principal's report.
Okay, good evening. In our principal's report, we have our enrollment history and our current enrollment at each grade level. We've pretty much stayed the same. We have 588 students in the district currently, 335 at RMS, and 253 at CSDA. On the second page of the report, you'll see a few pictures. The first is a lot of our classes are engaging in some measurement units and a lot of Lego building and measuring their builds, and they're really excited about those builds. I believe this build was 100 feet long in total length. So a lot of fun, but also learning going in that process. And then we have some bridge building. That's a very exciting unit during our guidance lessons. So guidance focuses a lot on the CASEL standards, and some of those standards are decision-making, relationships, and as you can see, when they're building together, they're working on those skills. This month is Traffic Safety Month in our district, so you've probably seen our signs around the buildings at all the schools. Some of the themes are being a traffic role model, wearing your seatbelt, beware of the buses. We yesterday had our off-site evacuation, and that's a situation where, unfortunately, we have to sometimes experience situations where we have to evacuate a building due to maybe a hazmat situation, a chemical spill, It could be a fire. It could be an intruder. So yesterday we practiced that type of drill. We were evacuated. We had accountability. We then have an off-site evacuation site. We have several for our school. We went to the fire station and then did a reunification where some families participated in that process just so we could get the timing down and just see how our practices functioned. We did videotape that, and we're using that as for more practice for our new staff to see how that drill is done. We're also going to use it at open house so we can educate our families at RMS, but also around the district, so that we can alleviate any stress and anxiety over that type of a situation. And then once we return back from vacation, we start our New Hampshire staffs for grades 3 through 6. But going back to the drill, I just want to thank all the safety officials in our town, the support from the SAU, and then the families that participated, but also our students and staff did a phenomenal job. All of our staff have roles in that drill, and they really take it with seriousness, but the students also conduct themselves very responsibly. They're aware that we do these drills for safety and to keep them safe and others safe, but just an outstanding job by our staff, so.
Dan, did they walk or did they take a bus?
Yeah, so we're fortunate to have a few sites, but we did walk to the fire station.
Okay, yeah, because I
Yeah.
remember when my daughter was in 3rd grade, they walked to the safety complex, I think.
Yeah, we alternate,
Oh, good.
opposite years, but
Great.
fire stations worked for us. Yep,
Nice, thank you.
you're welcome.
Okay.
And I've actually gotten a quick preview of the video, so it looks wonderful, which I'm definitely going to be sharing with the staff and students at CSDA. And we are also in conversations with the police and fire department and National Safety as far as doing something similar in the June timeframe. Our Brookline staffing needs, right now, we're looking for a curriculum administrator, and we've actually been having some wonderful interviews, so I'll let the SAU figure that out for us, hopefully. And then at RMMS, they're looking still for 3 paraeducators, down a half a custodian, guidance counselor, they'll be looking for, and obviously just the math specialist, and preschool, and a speech pathologist part-time. And for CSDA, our staffing needs continue with a case manager that I believe that we're going to be filling, a paraeducator, a custodian, and the grade 5 teacher that we just filled. So we'll be looking forward to that. Yeah, oh, and I'm sorry, I forgot, there was a couple of events coming up at grade 5. They're going to be having the Squam Lake Natural Science Center coming to CSDA tomorrow, so that we're looking forward to that. And in grade 6, of course, if anyone has students or have had past students, they know that in science, they build their Connects cars. So anytime you're walking down the hallways during this time frame, you'll be seeing cars whizzing by down the hallways as they're using measuring tapes and having a lot of time comparing their models. What's wonderful is that they have a final, and they call it the Egg Dash Crash and Smash, and there's a picture there with Mrs. Furbush and Mr. Snoke. They're competing to see if their egg would survive and do a faster speed than some of the students. The students had a wonderful time, and parents also participated, so that was a lot of fun. And one thing that I really like about it, the kids don't really like it, I've had conversations with them, at the end, they have to take all the pieces apart of the car, and they actually developed an economics lesson where each part costs something. So they're gonna find out when they're taking the car apart, how many wheels they used or different parts, and there's a price associated with them. So they're trying to figure out, they end up figuring out like, oh, if it was a real car, this is how much it would cost. So it's kind of a nice lesson. I've also added some pictures in there. I don't want people to forget about the great art teacher that we have, Mrs. LaRugot. And there's photos there of some of the great pottery that the students have been making. They're really very creative. So it's nice to be able to see that they're using clay, actually getting to fire it and use the kiln.
Thank you. All right. Well, we are moving along in our agenda here, so our next piece is public input. I am going to just quickly mention the public input policy, BEDH. We will have a maximum of 30 minutes to hear public comments. That may be extended by majority vote of the board. Individual speakers will be allotted 3 minutes per person and may not relinquish allotted time to another speaker. Chair will recognize speakers on a first-come, first basis. Speakers shall identify themselves and their home address clearly for the record, and except otherwise as provided in this policy, members of the public may offer comments on agenda items. So with that, if anyone would like to step up, by all means. If not, that's okay too. Good evening.
I am Kirsten Zimmerman, and I live at 31 Milford Street, Brookline. Sorry, I'm nervous. First, I want to thank all of you for volunteering your time and for all of the staff at all the schools. I am grateful I come from a long line of teachers, so I know how much time is invested. But I'm concerned that there is a bullying problem that's not getting addressed at CSDA. The kids in my daughter's classroom quite often don't feel safe because of one particular individual. This has been a child that has bullied numerous times. Threatened physically my child and even physically injured and hurt a para that was there at one point to help. This week, this child again went after another child in one of the specials. And I understand that you can't control the behavior of a child. However, you can anticipate things sometimes. The thing that really upset me and upset my child was that 15 minutes later, when the special was over, the bully was back in the classroom playing video games, like nothing was wrong. And all the other kids were still in like shock, like he did it again. And it's unacceptable. Like, I was told that, administrators weren't in the building, probably for the practice, drill. But what is the protocol for if there's not an admin in the building? What is the protocol to follow when there is a student who is physically threatening people, threatening other students? I want to know what the protocol is. And I also found out this week that parents aren't allowed to reach out to school board members to talk with them and share concerns. Why? Why are we not allowed to talk with them? They're here as our representatives. So I don't understand that. I want an answer to that. Also, why can't I get a student handbook? Today I tried to get a copy of the student handbook. My computer was giving me typical technology issues when you're trying to get something. And I called and said, can I just have a copy of the student handbook? And I was told, no, we don't have a way of providing you with that. You'll have to just download it. I was like, it's not working, it's not happening. So why can't I have a copy of the rules that we're all supposed to follow? Give me a copy of it. That's all. But can you answer my questions?
Well, yes and no. I can't be talking about a specific child.
I understand, and I was very
Yeah.
careful to respect the
Yeah.
to be anonymous and not share
Yeah.
that.
No, I mean, you could always reach out to a school board member. I don't know why that was said.
Okay,
I mean, people do all the time.
okay,
Typically what happens is if it comes to a board member, they alert the chair,
okay,
and then we have a conversation. Sometimes it makes it onto the agenda, not about a specific one, but in general.
okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
The student handbook, I mean, we have it online.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you couldn't download it, I mean, we should have been able to attempt to do that for you and get, put it in your child's backpack and send it home.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about that one. And
Yeah.
again, all of these I'm hearing for the first time. And you could always reach out to me, all right? And be happy to go over the protocols with you if you want to give me a call or email me,
Okay.
okay?
But are there protocols?
Oh, yes.
And is everybody aware of them? Is there a quick grab notebook or, clipboard in the wall that, something's going on, grab this, follow this policy, so that everybody knows this kid should not be back in a classroom, because all the other 20 kids are a little bit freaked out right now because of what happened, and he's back in there. Or the child is back in there.
There are definitely protocols. I can't talk about a specific child.
No, I understand, but I want to be sure that things can happen.
Oh,
Because that
absolutely.
kid should not have been back in the class.
I don't know the whole circumstances, so for me to speak to that right now would be inappropriate.
Okay, thank you.
And Kristen, my email's right online.
Yes.
Please reach out. I mean, I sometimes send people answers that they don't want to hear, but I always respond.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to address, like, my understanding. First of all, I want to thank Kirsten for coming forward. I know that it was difficult, and it was my understanding that school board members shouldn't be having one-on-one conversations with parents, and so that is my fault, because I told her that. And it was when Kirsten reached out to me this morning, I went to check the policy because I wanted to cite the policy and be like, oh, it says X, Y, and Z in the policy, and so I'm not supposed to have sort of ex parte conversations with a parent outside of a board meeting. And so I did recommend that she either A, email you and copy the Brookline School Board members, or come provide public testimony. So I really do appreciate you coming when you weren't planning that this morning, when you reached out to me. That being said, when I went on the website to look at the policies, I found out that the policies weren't available. And going back through my emails from March, I don't always read the emails that we get from the New Hampshire School Board Association, because we get a lot from them, and a lot of them are legislative updates. And so I missed that on March 23rd, they emailed us about the policy server being unavailable. And I was a little bit taken aback that we weren't made aware of that, and that another parent reached out and found out that we're the only school district in the state that uses their server to store our policies. And I just think I would have liked there to be a little bit more transparency about that, and wonder if there's like an alternative solution to sort of have local control or local storage on the server maybe of our policies. So again, I apologize to Kirsten if I gave you the wrong information this morning, but that was
No, I appreciate it.
my
You were
understanding.
Trying to get to work and took the time to answer me.
Yeah, but I do really appreciate you coming forward about the concerns that your students having, as I told you, and as I sent testimony in as a member of a private person to the legislature in New Hampshire yesterday. Schools should be places where kids feel safe, and so I want your child and all of our children to feel safe at school, and I think as a board, that's our goal. So we'll work on this.
Yeah, one thing I just overarching want to address too regarding contacting and communication is, I think you can always reach out to a school board member, and I think just flowing it so that we make sure we're all on the same page is important. And I always ask when parents reach out if there are particular incidents, has the administration been involved yet first? Because that's going to be a process anyway. So I would just always offer that up in parallel for that. As far as the bullying, I think we've seen this come up a few times. So it sounds like a big focus this year around socio-emotional learning, policy. It will be, the hate speech, the choose love, and the bullying. We're seeing this theme, and I personally think we're on a year-long, if not more, journey here as a board to help work with our administrators and try to flow that into the schools.
Just to piggyback, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, just as a new board member, if we could just, maybe talk maybe offline or just in, maybe it's a non-public conversation, but about having, if it's in policies and procedures or things like that about, what you just said, Ken, about how we, answer emails, like if it does go to you or to, to Andy, or how we, I know, we can't have conversations, all of us together on email, but it would just be really helpful to see
Sure.
how we answer emails and things like that, so that we are able to answer questions, or, just to have some guidance around that. That'd be
Sure.
super helpful.
And I'll just say on air right now, one thing that we are mindful of is replying all, because it starts constituting electronic meetings. So just for everyone to understand that. A
Right,
lot of
so-
times if I see one come to me, I'll reply on behalf of our board, but not everything comes to me, and that's great. But my biggest guidance would be just that we don't all reply all and have a chain, because then that constitutes, and we can talk more, but
Yeah.
I want everyone to hear that, why there's not reply alls on emails and there's
Right.
not a continued conversation. That's
Sure.
why.
Sure, but yeah, but like if I don't reply to a parent, or if like another board member replies to a parent, like if we just have some parity, like if, if we're all supposed to reply individually to parents, or if we're supposed to let that come from you, or if we're supposed to let that come from Andy, just so that we have some guidance around that, because I don't want to be, doing the wrong thing, or not replying,
Sure.
or replying and.
I mean, I could be wrong because I've only been at this for a year, but, I think it's common courtesy to reply and say like, thanks so much for reaching out. I appreciate you taking the time. I will make sure, and maybe ask the questions that Ken asked, like, has this gone to the building administrator? Have you talked to your child's teacher? Sometimes I've sent like the link to a policy or to the student handbook. Here's where you can find that information. And then, if I think it needs to be, I'll copy Andy on it, or the building principal or something like that. But I think, to not necessarily get into a two-way conversation about the subject matter of the email, but to acknowledge the correspondence and, kind of like think like how I feel when I like reach out to like a state rep or something and they don't reply to me. I think, well, they didn't reply to me. Like, so just,
Can I suggest we're gonna, a little later on during discussion, talk about a presentation in May, excuse me. So maybe we just put that, so we kind of put it all together, because it kind of all does go together. Because obviously, if something happens at school and you live in the community, a lot of times people are gonna approach you in the grocery store, and you need to be able to respond. I don't disagree with Kelly on that, because that's small-town America, that's what we expect. It's just, we need to look at how we respond. So I
Yep.
think this is a great discussion, and I think we can put it on in May. The other thing that some districts have gone to now, that I've noticed, is there's one button to communicate with the school board, so that anybody who sends an email automatically goes to the five of you, but the expectation is the chair responds for the board. And that way you're not constituting a meeting, but everybody's getting a reply, and then the chair kind of either maybe directs it to Dan or Tricia or that, but at least as a board that if it comes in, there's a responsibility. And if Ken was away on vacation or whatever, then it would just default to Colleen for that period of time. So we can talk about a few of those things that might streamline things for board members and the community.
That would be great, even for me. I mean, there was an email that I just wanted to mention, and it did come up where, with the policies, a parent couldn't find a policy. And so I went to search for it, and I was able to find it, but the link wasn't working, and now that makes sense to me. So I just wanted to put that out there, that people are having a hard time finding it. I actually was like determined to find it, but the only way I was able to access it was through the handbook, which was easily found, but then if you went to click on the policy link, which you normally would do, it would take you to that error message again,
Right.
the only way you could do it. So, and that's interesting, it came up, but I do think we should have a printed copy maybe for all of us, if that's okay, and just a couple available at the SAU if somebody
do.
needs it.
We do.
We do.
Every-
Okay.
and We
Oh,
have all
perfect.
them printed, they're at all the buildings.
Okay.
It's just, this is my 9th year, and this is the first time the policy site has ever been down.
Right.
And it existed before I came, and there was never an issue, but I think as we look at redoing our website, we might as well move them over. Because what happened is the safeguards for their servers, I'll say, are not as stringent as ours because of the data that we have. And more districts have moved away from their server. But they provided all the resources of you send them the policy, they post it, they do all that. But that's something we'll just have to move in-house.
Is that something we pay for, just out of curiosity?
So we pay fees, dues, and that was actually a point of discussion in some of our sessions this year. To be a part of New Hampshire School Board Association, some of those fees are for free legal services. Some of those fees are to have access to sample policies that, along with policy updates based on legislative updates and changes. And then they host our policies. I will say that we initially went in that direction because we don't have enough staff to manpower the database. We're a little bit better staffed now than we were 15 plus years ago, and so we can absolutely look at that again. But to Andy's point, I've been a part of this district for 18 years, and we've never once had a problem. So it was kind of a fluke thing for us, and not something that we really expected. But it was, that email was sent out to board members, whether or not it was by board members that were on their registry at the time, so you two weren't on there. And it is noticed on our website that the database is down. It's not something that we have control over, and it does say to come to the SAU office for a paper copy. We were told to stop making paper copies because they change all the time, but I have the binder of the paper copies in my office, just because I thought it was important to maintain that, just in case.
Have they given us a timeline of when those servers might be back up?
They did, they assured us it would be back up already. It is not.
Okay.
And I think Kelly made the point, I didn't realize that we had become the only one left, to be honest with you. So now, understanding that, we're probably not that big a priority to them. So that's why we'll move it in-house as we do the IT upgrade.
So,
I will say I appreciated, though, in the agenda for tonight, the policies that are referenced were
Right.
in the packet.
We
Right,
are.
if we're gonna-
And I do just want to call that out, that I did appreciate that was there, because I would have gone clicking and looking, and I knew that they were down in advance. So,
Yeah, and
but
we-
I do appreciate you guys
and we make a
package
point.
the agenda as well.
We are required to post an agenda. We're not required to provide all the backup, but we make a point of doing so for that very reason. Try to streamline it, make it as simple as possible, and as transparent as possible for anyone who wishes to follow along online, in person, or just through, the agenda and the minutes.
Just want to call, I appreciated that, so I just wanted to flag
so
that.
we still have the electronic copy somewhere though, right? We didn't, okay. That was the only, as I was hearing it, thank you. That helps instill confidence for anyone that's wondering that question too. And Kirsten, we went on a lot of turns there. I want to thank you for your public input there. Normally, we don't go quite as circuitous. I butchered that word, but as much as we did there, but thank you for your input. We certainly hear what you're saying.
And I just want to say there is an agenda item that relates directly to that shortly. So I'm kind of saving a discussion on a more general topic of incidents of concerns between students, so, thank you.
Okay, so let's move to our discussion. We have 5 pieces tonight, and the first being the 2023 revenue and expense update. Donna?
Okay, so in the first packet, you had the March revenue and expense report. So at the beginning of this week, we sent out the one from April 10th. They are still pretty similar from last month, where we stand, unfortunately, in the negative. Again, a lot of unanticipated special ed costs, some unexpected legal expenses, and it leaves us with $34,022 negative balance for our expenses. And then when we look at the revenue, we show a little bit in excess of what we had budgeted, of around $26,927. This leads us to a $32,398 unreserved fund balance. Then when we try to fund the trust and the retained fund balance, which we like to anticipate for FY '24, it gives us a $162,602 negative balance. Kelly has proposed to account for this negative balance that we use the FY '23 retained fund balance for a required ADA project of $109,687 and some of the special ed expendable trust fund of $52,916, which would leave us with a zero projected fund balance.
So to that end, in May, we would do a public hearing for the ADA projects and the special ed expendable trusts. That's been going on all year. We've been discussing that. Those numbers will probably fluctuate again come May, so it may be a little more, it may be a little less. If we did nothing, we would finish the year $32,398 ahead. You know, it's just a matter if you fund the maintenance trust and you fund the retained fund balance. And how you get the retained fund balance is actually by spending the retained fund balance. So when you, basically you have $140,000 in the FY '23 retained fund balance that's not on the revenue and expense report because it can only be used for specific purposes. All right? And the ideal purposes is the ADA projects that we were required to do. And that's why we'd have a public hearing. And then when you fund that $110,000, all of a sudden you're going to have the ability to have a retained fund balance in FY '24.
Makes sense.
Mhm.
And the ADA project was unplanned, I believe, right? So
Correct.
that's why it falls under the retained fund and why it would qualify.
Correct. And just for the new board members, this has been an ongoing process since about September. We froze the budget then. Special ed costs are results of move-ins over the summer, which Brookline has been selling houses. So we've had a number of move-ins. And then, as Ken said, the ADA projects were requirements to meet some code issues for some students who had specific needs. So overall, a lot better than September and October. And we'll continue to move forward. And it's not much different than our position a year ago. And you see, just to give you a comparison, the Hollis District is in slightly better position, but they, like Brookline, have seen just a massive growth in their enrollment. So they're running into different costs and things that were unexpected as well.
Do we have students tuitioning into Brookline?
Is there a tuition line?
Yeah.
Because that would be for preschool.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think we have,
One other question, Donna, you mentioned legal increases that were unanticipated. What were those driven by?
Unanticipated legal and advertising expenses?
So that's a couple of pieces. So the legal pieces would be excessive legal services from things such as right to knows in the beginning of the summer.
Okay.
In addition, we've had to advertise for vacant positions, and the cost of that is far more than it has historically been.
Okay.
And we've had to use far more advertising for those positions, so.
Thank you.
I will tell you that it's, as we enter into the hiring process, it's very interesting how strong our hiring pools are. To give you an example, we'll be discussing in non-public the curriculum coordinator's position, but we received 31 applications.
Wow, that's wonderful.
It really was, and some really qualified people that made the committee's decision is very difficult. And we're seeing the same thing happening with our elementary positions that we have open right now. We have a few open in Hollis. What we try to do as much as possible, if the principals are available, they'll sit in on each other's interviews, never knowing when I'm going to need a teacher, and try to speed that process up, because the most difficult piece we're facing this year is people with multiple offers. You know, the cream of the crop is being scooped up quick, So that's something we're really looking to do, is kind of expedite our process. Just to give you an example, not necessarily in Brookline, but Gina and I did probably 5 superintendent interviews today. Most of them Zoom, just to get it so that we get to meet the candidate, but don't hold up the process until, say, after vacation. Mhm. So it's an interesting market. We're doing very well, but it's a very competitive market.
Okay.
In your packet, and not looking for a vote tonight, because it's a very lengthy document, is the general assurances for FY '24. Just to let you know what those are, we receive federal dollars. That would be the lunch program, IDEA, which is your special education grants. We receive Title II, which was professional development, and Title IV, which is, I'm going to say technology. And then Brookline also receives a REAP grant, which is based on technology. It's a rural education grant. When we do the applications for those grants every year, we have to do assurances of how we'll watch over the money and meet the requirements. If we're going out to bid, did we get 3 bids? All of those compliance issues. So this document explains all of that to you. Next month at the May meeting, I'd have it under the deliberation items. And then if the board approves, which I recommend because of the amount of money we generate from federal dollars, then both Ken and I sign off. It's about 3 years ago that they started having board chairs sign off. For me, it's part of my license and Gina's license to adhere to these standards, along with the business administrator. So it's not something that we're not regularly doing. We have an annual audit. All of these pieces get audited. But this is a requirement of the federal government that the state must comply with, so that's how they send out the assurances. And knowing that it's a very riveting document, I thought it might take more than one sitting to get through. And if you have questions as you go along or concerns are raised, please don't hesitate to reach out, let Ken know. It'll be on the agenda again, or you can email me and we'll get you an answer.
Okay. It's an exciting read. I can
It-
attest to
it
that
is.
as well.
Page turner.
Yeah. Okay, so we're over to our calendar. Do we have, this is, I'm sorry, last school calendar, last day of school for this year.
Yep.
All right,
Yes, we're going to cover both.
yeah.
We are proposing, and we have met the requirements to be done on June 16th with a half a day for the entire SAU. And our teachers would finish up Tuesday, June 20th. That is a professional development day dedicated to school security and safety. So they'll be going through a day of training, which we do annually. As Dan did with his drill, we videotape that training so we can use it for new hires when they come on board in August for their new orientation, or any staff member who may miss the training. It just assists us tremendously. So that'll be the last day of school. And then, as you can see further down, we'll do a deliberative item on the school calendar, which Gina presented to you last month. And there are no changes, and it's gone through,
Approved in about
It-
the other
yep.
two.
so we're in good shape.
Could you just, because I know a couple of people asked me about the calendar for this year and the last day. And could we explain for parents who might not understand why you might put the 19th on and it might end up being the 16th? Because I want to make sure that I explained it well, which I don't know if I did. I think we go extra hours and, so
Our school
some
day is
working
longer,
families.
sure.
Yeah, would
Yeah,
love
our
to-
school day is longer than just about anyone else in the state. So that's why you see other school districts around us getting out 2, 3, 4 weeks before us. So we have 178 days, but then when we look at it all and try to determine at what point do we complete our curricular requirements, it makes a lot more sense to have that final day on June 16th with a half day, have an even break on that Friday. So essentially, we have gone well above and beyond our requirements by hitting that point. And then you have other factors to consider as well. Less important certainly, but something to consider. When we have projects across the district and we're trying to complete them in a short 9-10 week period, oftentimes getting started on that Saturday will make sure that we can actually open the buildings when we say we want to start school. So that's a component of it, not the most important part, but like I said, we far surpass our requirements, and we look to see where we are at in our curriculum and if we've met our stated goals, which we will by then.
Thank you. I think the input just from a couple of working families was they had planned on having that day, not as like a camp day or anything like that, that 19th. So just to put that, and I did say that for, no matter what decision you all make, just like snow days, it's not gonna please everybody, because you'll have a lot of parents angry. And I support all parents speaking their mind on this, but who would be mad that their child has to come back to a hot, sweaty building for, especially if it's a Tuesday. So I appreciate just explaining that, because people don't know what we know, so.
And the other piece is, it's also a transportation issue. You know, do we want to run the fleet of buses for that one day the following week? You know, so there's that. And a lot of it also functions off of, we try to be in X number of days after graduation. So that's, you know, the co-op's decision of just finalizing graduation, which they have done. But we've been pretty good the last few years about being right around there, because we build in the 5 snow days. And I think that's what some people forget, like, we don't have a snow day, we're actually out earlier than anticipated. You know, we weren't that lucky this year.
Yeah.
All right, so that,
Good.
also, next in your packet that we'd be voting on in May, as Dan talked about his safety drills, and he has the option of going to the police station or the fire station. For the last couple of years, when we have done drills at CSDA, basically they have exited the parking lot, gone down to the first street on the left, which I can't think of the name right there.
10 Rod Road.
10 Rod, and the police close that off, and that's where our children gather. I want to thank Kelly Seeley. She reached out to DECO, who is a huge community supporter. And in your packet that you can review and look at, and we'll vote on next month, is an agreement with DECO, so that if we encountered an emergency any day of the week at any time, they would allow our students to be in there, in the building safe, so we eliminate weather conditions, and we have what I'll call a much securer facility, and the ability to utilize like what I'll call parent pickup or bus pickup out of a facility. So I don't want to minimize my thanks to DECO for stepping forward for this, because this really helps. It's very close to CSDA, and in a true emergency, just like if it had been the other day, we wouldn't have worried about, we would have still walked on the sidewalk, but there wouldn't have been any traffic on the street, because the Brookline Police would have just shut down the entire length from here to the fire station or here to the police station. And the same thing would happen in a true emergency at CSDA. They would block from the entrance side all the way down to Route 13 to give our kids safe passage, because there are no sidewalks really over there. So what I'd like you to do is go through this. This was written by our legal counsel.
Yep.
And he supports it and thinks it's very comprehensive. What your vote would do in May is authorize me to sign it on behalf of the Brookline School District. And then that would become our future emergency home. If we do that in May, there's a likelihood we'll coordinate with them and practice that when Tricia does her drill in June.
Not knowing, I'm embarrassed to say this, having lived here for almost 10 years, I don't know what DECO does. Is there like a big sort of open warehouse space where the students can wait if they need to be like protected from the elements?
Yes, actually, when Kelly and I were working on this, I actually went down and had a tour. I also brought down one of my secretaries, Mary Lou Gilbert. So we had a full tour of the whole facility. Basically, they're a training center. They're a manufacturing.
Okay.
Their main facility is in Nashua. But they have a lot of training rooms where there's a lot of space, or there's tables and chairs that could be moved aside or put away, so that we would be able to fit all of the students and staff. If there was an emergency and weather permitting, we had to go inside for any reason. There's lots of bathrooms. We would be able to set up an area for triage. They also have other huge garage areas where if we had to rush into a particular space, they have fencing and electronic gates that, again, to protect students and staff. So I'm really appreciative of the tour that we were provided and their hospitality to be able to be on call if there was ever an emergency. And right now, as I mentioned, we're hoping to do some type of drill in June. And it may just entail simply having all the students and staff walk down, do a count there as far as population attendance, and then just walk back up. But at least to give everybody an idea, a sense of what it would take if there was an emergency. We would try to have it arranged as a nice stroll down the street. But then what we would do is return to CSDA, and I'd be in contact with a few parent volunteers to actually then set up the reunification up in the parking lot. That, again, that would give us the opportunity to have all the staff there, check our paperwork, and the same type of systems that Dan has put together. And so we can at least practice it. And this being my third year, we've never done something like this, any type of evacuation. And we've been working on this for a year with DECO. And, we wanted to make sure that we tied in with our council as well before doing so.
Yeah, that sounds great. Sounds like a very generous offer from them.
Yeah, it looks no cost, and the agreement's essentially indemnifying them, holding them harmless from anything that happens on their property, their grounds, but I agree.
Can I ask a couple questions about this?
Sure.
And this process? 'Cause I really appreciate DECO stepping up for this. And how many employees do they normally have on site on a given day?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly, I can get that information for you, but actually, if we do our drill, we're gonna try to work on it on a Friday, because they typically work 4 days a week. So if you drive by there on Fridays, it's usually empty, except for, some of the key personnel or management.
So I guess my follow-up to that is, in the event, heaven forbid that there's an emergency, we need to evacuate the students there, because I don't see it in this document, but is there a protocol to make sure that the employees either
Or separate.
are separate from the students, to make sure that
We could,
I know it's an emergency situation,
Right.
so there's a level of, we hope that there's that trust and that partnership with them, but I also
Right.
want to, just be mindful that then there's adults and our students, and so we've thought that through.
yeah, this document is just addressing the use of the facility.
Okay.
The procedures that we would take when we got there is, because all of us would respond, so the SAU is coming over, police and fire, and basically you're going to get a separation, and you're going to get, as you would recall from your days, each teacher with their group of 15 to 20 kids that they're responsible, lined, it's a big enough facility that we'll be able to line right across.
I haven't been there, so
Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah,
hearing that.
and, but again, we can look at that next month as well and give you more clarification, because I do agree with you, it's just, you're going from one place, you don't know who's there,
Yeah.
or what their standards are, but it would only be SAU or CSDA, students and police and fire working with students.
Sure.
Right.
I
And-
just wanted,
Yeah, and just for clarification, ideally, this would be a location for us to, a waiting area, ideally, until we can have the buses pick us up and bring us to the safety complex.
perfect.
In a dire an emergency where, again, we needed to be inside someplace quickly, this is when we would utilize their interior.
Okay, and there would be some protocol to make sure that
Yeah.
employees and
Right.
SAU kids are
Right,
separate.
and I'll be honest with you, the day that we went through, there was one small training session in one room, and there was, in the manufacturing, there were some individuals, but
Yeah.
not
No,
many.
no worries, just had to ask the
Yeah.
question.
Yep.
The
No, no,
other
but-
question about this particular, this doesn't look like this has any kind of expiration date on this. So, is this something that we're gonna kind of re-up and talk to them every couple of years about? Is this isn't forever, so what's kind of the intended
This would be our
purpose of
ongoing
this?
relationship with DECO. I think what we would do is do some drills, learn something about the process. If we had concerns or they had concerns, come back to this document. Kind of similar to what we do with our police and school agreements in Hollis and the co-op, regularly reviewing those, what the officers can and can't do, so to kind of be the same thing here.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, great. All right, so we have one last piece now for board discussion tonight. It's around a May presentation on response to intervention in socio-emotional learning.
What we were looking for as an administration is to kind of address pieces from the board and pieces that we may already know, but we didn't want to miss anything, so we thought if we could take a 10 or 15-minute discussion or less and just kind of map out what you'd like to see, then Dan and Tricia, Gina and I will work together to kind of put that together, go through that in May, and kind of use that also as our jumping off point for what we'd like to see really to open. Obviously, we have a month to start to put some things in place, but then kind of what we'd like to see in place for that opening in the fall. So I am wide open.
So we can just start spitballing, so were you about to say
Yeah,
something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can start the discussion if
Please.
you want. I think just educating us as a board and the public as to where we are as the baseline for MTSSB, as it's called, and how we're intervening with students, all students who need to be taught social emotional skills on Tier 1, and then how we're intervening on Tier 2 and Tier 3 for students who might be either experiencing bullying or might be acting that way themselves. So I just, even being in, and I will reiterate that pool of candidates, I know I can't talk specifically and I'm not going to, but in 18 years, I've never sat in an interview session where almost every candidate had something to offer, and each one was just amazing in many ways. So that brought me a lot of hope, but where's our baseline for all that? Because I'm a parent, and I think I'm fairly involved, and I'm also a board member, and I don't know where we're at with that. So, and it is just sort of, it's okay, because we're finally gonna have a curriculum administrator. We have a special ed administrator, so we have this opportunity, so what's the baseline? And then just to reiterate that since the last meeting, where we talked about horribly racially motivated words being used by students against other students, that there have been a couple more incidents. And, I'm in a unique position as a parent to sometimes know both families in the situation. And I think gleaning, without getting into specifics, when you have a kindergartner encouraging another kindergartner to use the N-word, to me, that says there's a lack of education most likely in the home, but there's a lack of education in general, everywhere about the impact of that word on a student. So just curious where we're at with that, and that ties into social emotional learning. But, and there was also another incident where a student referenced another student by their race. And again, without getting into specifics, because I don't want it to be about students, it seemed like there must be a lack of education, because certainly I even mentioned this to the parent of the student this happened to, that I can't imagine there was intent there. But, I sat my own daughter down, and I never wanted to have this conversation, but I told her, if somebody tries to tell you to use that word, absolutely not. And it's a hard conversation to have, but, how are we in general making sure our kids feel safe is just a bigger discussion. As a parent, but also as a special ed administrator, and then as a board member, I know that all of these situations are nuanced, and that part of the problem is we can't share with parents how nuanced they are. I don't know that, I have heard reports about what you're talking about even that day, and I know that we can't tell you anything about that student to protect him, just like we would never tell anyone else about your daughter to protect them. But the bottom line that I'm hearing is everybody just needs to feel safe. A child who's acting out, we all know, is doing that for a reason. how do we keep him safe and keep other people feeling safe? So I just support that, and I think there's ways to do this. It's not as easy as academics sometimes. I think that's a little easier to intervene, but I think for the public to know that we're really trying to address it. And I just listening in those interviews now know how much we are addressing it already, but I did not know that beforehand. So that's just my input.
Thanks, Colleen. I guess I also would like to know, for the board's perspective, how the Choose Love program is presented to the districts and to the SAU. And then, I know that there are programs that, they come into the school building, but then what happens after the program is presented? What is the integration on a daily basis? When I was fortunate enough to be a substitute school nurse in the district a few years ago, I was at Hollis Upper Elementary, I think, a couple of days or maybe a week after they had the Choose Love program in the building. And, I saw little rubber duckies all over the place. Like, I think rubber duckies are like one of their little things. And I heard people engaging about them, and so left me this ducky or so obviously that was an outward demonstration of it, but I guess, like, how is it being operationalized on a daily basis? And, I do know that one of the foundations of that is, kindness and community and, interacting with each other and accepting one another. And, and really preventing gun violence and preventing, the terrible epidemic in our country. We want children to feel safe in schools. Do children feel safe in schools? Do teachers feel safe in schools? But that by addressing what many people think is the root cause of this epidemic, which is students feeling unaccepted, students being bullied, students bullying, feeling ostracized, not to mention the mental health, crisis, especially with young people, that was obviously worsened after the pandemic and the isolation people felt. But, my understanding is that the Choose Love program is really meant to try to get to that root cause and give people that foundation. And, I guess would like to understand, better. I happen to know the New Hampshire coordinator for the program, and know that she has a heart of gold, and but she was respectfully, didn't want to, speak to me ex parte. And was very worried when I asked her, oh, would you come, present to the board? And she's like, oh, I would hate to do that because I wouldn't want it to make it seem like it was a board versus administration type of thing or whatever. But I think just for the opportunity for us to learn more about it, and, what else is going on in addition to that. I know we have the Red Tiger theater group. Red Tiger. Yeah, I think there was a Red Wagon theater group.
They do a bowling thing.
Yeah, so just all the different programs that come into the school, I think for us to know about and just to try to understand what we're doing as a district.
So I'm gonna add to your list, and I would like us to really go over whatever policies or guidelines we have surrounding bullying and racism in our schools. I have been able to find the helpful, hurtful guidelines. I have not found a student code of conduct. If we don't have one, I'd like to open conversations as to instituting one. And I think that that would be in some ways very helpful for our families so that if their families are experiencing issues within the school, while we can't talk about what happens should an investigation happen, we find, and the schools find that bullying has happened, while we can't talk about the specific nuances, at least they're within a structured, age-appropriate step, kind of tiered response of educating our students and managing the situation, so maybe we better understand, okay, well, there's structured steps on how this is being handled. If we don't have that in place, I'd like to open up conversations to put that in place. I would also like to understand what kind of communication goes out to our school community at large. And when I say school community, I don't just mean the students and the teachers or the school board. I'm talking about our families as well. So when an incident happens on campus, we'll say, heaven forbid there's a fight. It's really easy to validate that that happened, right? We can send a communication home immediately, or a bus is running late. We get communications out immediately. This is happening. There are other instances where perhaps we need some time to validate and investigate. And if something has been reported and we find that perhaps unfortunately it has happened, we should be communicating that to our school community, saying, earlier this week or late last week, there was an incident that happened on our campus. We don't tolerate this. This is, by our mission and vision, this is what we're teaching. Please speak to your students, your families, or however we want to word it, about having, being kind and being good community members while we're at school. And that the school is following up. We just wanted to make you aware. Please support us in speaking to your student at home. I think communication like that would go a very long way with our community. Of course, it needs to be validated. Again, sometimes these things can come out the same day. Sometimes it may take a day or two. But I think communication, and very transparent communication, along with some kind of student code of conduct that at least shows our families and our school community what the expectations are. Especially dealing with K-6, students are learning right from wrong, right? They're learning how to interact. And it is going to take time with a lot of these with the programs we have coming in. We're in the business of educating our kids, but we want to, at the same time, make sure that the environment for everybody is safe. And I think that I would like to believe that if we are being communicative with our families, that helps them to feel safe to come back to school, knowing that there is a structure, it is being addressed. So I would just kind of like to know what we have in place, what we wanted, what perhaps isn't there, where our gap is, and then work to fill that. The other thing, and maybe this isn't quite for May, but one of the things that I would like to see come out from the board to our community is that we are taking steps to address this. And I know we're having this conversation here and now, but I don't think it would hurt us to put something out to the community at large. Given the public input from last month, from tonight, the communications we've received in between, I think it would do some good to at least state that, we don't tolerate these behaviors. We are working to address them. It's a process. I think everybody understands that. And we want to make sure we do it the right way and that we do it effectively. So lastly, the other thing that I would like to propose, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to, but I'm going to say it since I'm running my mouth. I would like to see a committee formed for bullying and racism, whether one of a board member chairs it, just to ensure that the gaps, like with the communications or the codes of conduct, if we need to develop those, I would really like to see a committee with our members here leading the charge in that. So
Parent volunteers, I'm happy to be.
I have your name.
Anyway, so I understand. I know at one point you had a DEI task force. I don't know anything about it, to be fair. I don't know if it's gone anywhere. I just heard it mentioned last time. I wasn't able to find a whole lot between then and now. I've also been life. So if that's something that we can work into the conversation, if that's still pertinent, that would be wonderful. If not, perhaps pivoting and getting a committee together to really structure some of this for our community, I think, from my seat would be beneficial.
Excellent, thank you. Tracy?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what my my fellow board members say. I've read a lot of the emails that community members, parents have written to us, what other people and what other community members have said. I think the through line of what I've heard is that we want our children, and that children should feel safe and included and welcomed in our schools. And I think whether it is a child who doesn't feel that way and feels the need to act out, or whether it is a child who is being bullied, I think both of those children are hurt, and both of those children need our help. And so I think we really need to look at what is going on, because I think we owe it to the kids in our schools to really help. And I think we do need to help. I think there is some issues there. I really would like to see. I have a really high bias for action, so I do have 4 goals. I would like to see if we could put out some sort of statement and have some sort of clear communication plans for when there are incidences of bullying and racism. I think communication and transparency do help minimize, in a small town especially, kind of how things can be misconstrued or get out of hand. I would like to see more work done, and again, I haven't been able to kind of really look at some of our policies because I haven't been able to access them. But again, dig into some of our policies. I love Allison's point about the student code of conduct. I am all for doing some work if it's, now and throughout the summer, being on a committee and doing that work. I'm here to do the work, and I would love to be able to help and do that work. And I think in order to do this work, to do it well, to do it right, to do right by our parents, our administration, and our teachers, and our students, most importantly, we may have to not have a high bias for action. And so we may have to, have everything rolled out in September. But to be able to roll things out and to roll them out over time, but to have a plan for September, but to at least have some statements and to start working on some policies.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? I guess primarily for Dan and Trish, who are in the buildings. Having not been in the building since the state of New Hampshire passed the divisive concepts law, I'm just wondering if you think, or if you've observed maybe teachers or adults in the building feeling reluctant to, I guess, like proactively talk about racism or bias, or why certain words are unacceptable, or why certain, stereotypes or words are hurtful, and what the history behind some of those words are. Like, I don't know, like, especially in a pre-K through 6 environment, like how much any of that would be, part of a curriculum. But I just wonder, like, I know that in the upper grades, I've certainly heard our teachers testify about sort of the gag order they feel in being able to teach children sort of the history of some of those concepts, I guess. I hate to say concepts, but I'm just wondering, like, if you feel like that political, state law has like affected it, because I think we are sort of hearing more about it in recent years, and I'm just curious if you think that's a factor.
Well, I can speak particularly for, I'd say more, well, grades 4, 5, and 6. I do think that has affected it. I can also speak to my own experience. I was teaching in grades 3 through 5. And when you're teaching social studies, depending upon what the topic was, you were very careful to stick to the curriculum. And if questions, became questionable or, topic was going off topic or too deep, teachers would step back. And I think they do to protect themselves.
Yeah.
But also, there's also this feeling on the part of parents, which they have that right, that a lot of families feel that they have the right to instruct their child.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so
And-
much. And so I guess, like, for Andy and Gina, like, coming back to, like, how you can help the board, I guess, what kind of, like, guidance, training, support are we giving to our teachers, or able to give to our teachers, like, to help them navigate these things, right? Because I understand that, like, and I think, like, if you start from a foundation of kindness and helpful, hurtful words, I feel like helpless about that, I guess. And I just wonder, like, how we can help support our teachers.
Well, I think part of it, and I'm sure Dan will agree with me, I think our guidance counselors are a wealth of knowledge and support. I know the past couple of years since I've been here, I would go in with the guidance counselor and teach lessons with her as far as bullying, what it means to have, for friendship, communication, courage, what it means to be an upstander. So those topics are definitely discussed. And just alone this year, in October, I worked with the classrooms, a classroom in each grade level, and we worked to have the students create posters. And then they created skits, and they actually presented their skits about the importance of communication, how to be a good friend, what it means to be an upstander. And they demonstrated that and performed their skits in front of the whole school for an assembly. So you
That's
got
great.
perspectives from grades 4, 5, and 6, and then we put the posters up in the cafeteria as reminders of what it means to be a good person, how we can effectively communicate, and the importance of communication, and how our words do have a lot of meaning.
Great, thank you.
So, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. And I was just gonna, I agree with Trish, but I think unfortunately too, for our teachers, a lot of times we're on the receiving end too, because we're not teaching these words or these racial slurs. Our teachers don't tolerate that, and it's not tolerated in the schools. And unfortunately, it's a societal piece. It's what students are seeing on social media, what they're exposed to outside of schools, and then we're being reactive to it. So definitely a topic we need to look into. And the minute we hear these things, we act on it. But we only know what we know. Like, if we're not finding out about it at that time, and it's several, it could be, sometimes we find about things several weeks later. But the minute we do find out, we take action,
So to maybe help, with this conversation, I think I would wonder from an educator standpoint, and this might be, you may need time to speak with your staff, but when they're engaged with different programs or being asked to teach certain concepts of love and kindness, or start working with some programs. I haven't dug into Choose Love, but I was involved with a similar one. but not all teachers were comfortable even doing that. And so I would really be curious from a, you know, and this I think the four of you really kind of need to dig into with your teachers is genuinely and truly not superficially, but what are our teachers' comfort level in the programs that we have in place that we're asking them to do? What's your comfort level with that? We have a lot of young teachers, and for those of you who haven't taught, your first year, you nothing exists except like how to manage your classroom, right? And then if you're asking, if we're asking them to teach these extra concepts, that can be uncomfortable for adults too. Even at these younger grades with the, you know, softer word tones and word choices, it can be challenging for them. And so I just wonder how receptive our teachers are to that, and if what you guys currently have in place, if the teachers are comfortable enough with that, or if we need to pivot and look at something that perhaps gives them a little bit more structure or support, or it's a co-taught situation, or there's other programs that maybe, depending on the buy-in from the teachers and their comfort level, buy-in might not be the right word, but just their comfort level in even executing that. I've seen programs similar to Choose Love where the teachers who embraced it and were comfortable with it because they were also confident with their own teaching felt like they could tackle that, and they were very successful. But then I saw other teachers that were not so, and Andy and I have had a conversation about this. So I would just be curious if you guys haven't genuinely had an open conversation with your teachers about that. I would ask that maybe you do. I think it might help inform some of the direction that we go as a district in terms of how we are helping our teachers to teach these concepts too, because you don't learn that when you go to school for education. There isn't a class on that. So it's an extra level and it's an extra layer that we're asking of our teachers, and I just want to make sure that the support or what we're asking them to do is effective and supportive. And if it's not, I would say that we need to relook at what we're asking them to do and how.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of good points made. To me, I think the comms of everything is probably a glaring piece that we should look at further, and I think it's been talked about, but we talked about how there was a website and it wasn't available. I think understanding the difference between bullying at K through 6 is an important thing, because what is bullying through K through 6, and then how do we respond to that? I'm not sure, because that word can be thrown around a lot. So sometimes there's real bullying, and it can change the way that's looked at. I've heard feedback from the community around the communications, if there is in fact an event, if we can figure out something there. I know there's the privacy piece, but something, if there's a way to thread the needle there and further look into that. And then almost like something with socio-emotional learning on our website that shows all the different curriculums that we're doing, so that parents can understand that and engage with their children too. I know that my first grader is always not the most forthcoming about what happens every day at school, but if we can talk about some of those things, it helps pull on that thread a little further, because I think there's a lot of good that's being done in the schools, and I really believe that, and I think it's only going to get better with the curriculum coordinator, and I'm really encouraged by all that. So that's why I think just coalescing and getting it together and building on it would be pretty powerful.
Excellent. Well, I thank you all very much. What we'll do is we'll pull this together. We'll approach it from, I'll call silos, a policy silo. I'm not opposed to a committee silo. Also, what things we might be talking about would have expense, so that we could have it for the FY25 budget, those type of things. And I will obviously have Dan and Tricia kind of lead that discussion. But I think this is exactly what we were hoping to gather, because sometimes when you're in it every day, you don't see what others see. So this discussion is great, and people coming forward is very much appreciated. So we'll put that together. And again, I thank you very much.
Can I just ask one quick question, just Andy? In terms of the committee, or the Committee on DEI, do you have is there a plan to, I don't know if it was a task force or a committee, or is there a plan to move forward with that or resume that?
Where it was left, we brought forward the statement that is on the SAU website. And that was a group of people from both towns. A lot of different viewpoints were represented. And we came up with that statement. At that time, we brought it back to the boards, and it was recognized kind of as an administrative statement that we could use to inform teachers and that, but it was not adopted by any of the boards. So I'm happy to, bring that forward, because we did one statement for the SAU, but obviously, if we put together a committee and you want that to be looked at and maybe defined further for Brookline, we could do that. I'm not opposed to that. And I think many of the people that were on that committee are still very involved in our schools, and would be happy to pitch in again.
I think if we have a committee surrounding bullying, racism, codes of conduct, we can roll that in, and
Yep.
that could be
Right.
all, all kind of encompassed in that bucket. I think would be effective.
No, I couldn't agree more with that. And I think, the other thing that hit was then COVID came in.
Yep.
So the reality was it was twofolds. I mean, there was, this pandemic going on and just trying to keep schools open, have kids face to face, and then all the other work. So I think it's an appropriate time, and kind of that's what I'd like to do next month is kind of limit our agenda, but make this a significant discussion point on it. So not only do we make a presentation, but we have time to tweak it and kind of move forward. Even if we get 50% of it done and we're coming back in June, that's fine, because I agree with everybody. Children are not at their best learning ability in the month of June. So kicking off, because even parents are, as a parent, I was tired by June, and, it's been a long road. So happy to do that.
The only other thing I guess I'd say, so you mentioned, I heard you say a statement, Allison. To me, I think the statement is pretty clear right now that the board and administration is behind this. I think the entire summer months will be dedicated to rolling something out by the time the next school year rolls out. And I agree around when we talk agenda building, it's likely going to be limited to really looking at that revenue expense piece and voting on that, because we're going to need to do that. But then this is it. And this is going to be the meat of it through May, June, and whatever, and so that we're ready for the next school year. So I'm not sure how we can, I guess for those watching or the meeting minutes and everything, I think proclaiming right now, statement made, we are endorsing this and we're going to take action here, and it can't happen overnight. And I think we made that clear last month as well, and people understood that, but we are committed to this journey, and I think you heard it tonight from everyone that we are.
And I'm new, so I'm not trying to push back a whole lot, but as a parent, as a working parent, how many people are actually gonna sit down and read the minutes or see this? And that's why I was just wondering if a high level, we are working on this, we hear you, we're responding. For more information, you can check out me. I just wonder if maybe putting it out there as a whole, given a lot of the feedback that we've been hearing, might be beneficial for those who are feeling affected by it, but maybe are unsure to say anything, don't really want to speak up, maybe don't have the time to find minutes. I just wonder if that would be a nice or a helpful to our community, we got you type.
Yeah,
I mean, just a,
No, I don't disagree, but because it's going to be a statement between the board and the administration, I think we should discuss it next month. Okay, because I think it would be unfair if, let's say, I crafted a message and didn't capture what people think was appropriate. So I think maybe that's part of our focus. We'll bring what I'll call a draft of a statement, and we'll see, that way we'll kind of force that to be done. So we all get to a comfort point, and then roll everything off of that.
there's just a process to any statement made,
I
and I think I just have to, that's all.
I
Yeah.
fully understand that.
Yeah.
I just know in talking to community members, hearing what's been going on, seeing the communications, I just feel like while I understand that it's a process, I feel like it's too important. I feel like this is important enough to engage that process. To just flag it for our families that we hear you, we recognize it, we're on it. If you want more information, come hang out with us. If you have it, if you can pull up the minutes, pull up the minutes. But it, you know, if I was a parent affected by it, maybe I would go digging for the minutes. Maybe I would just, in the moment when you're upset, it's sometimes hard because you live it. It's sometimes hard to go digging to know that somebody's got your back. And this way, let's put the hand out there to say we got you. That's all I'm asking for.
Excellent. Great. Just to
Okay.
Chair, the next piece is the deliberations.
Yep.
I just wanted to remind the Chair, the BCA is the board member of the Code of Ethics, but that's just a roll call vote.
Right.
Just that's the only one that does that.
Okay, thank you. So this has been in our packet here. We do this at the start of every new year. You can see the readoption for BCA. So I'm going to just make a motion, and then we can discuss if needed. So I'll make a motion that the board by roll call state agreement to adhere to policy BCA Board Member Code of Ethics. So I need a second, please.
I'll second.
Colleen seconds that. Okay, so is there any discussion around this? This is essentially us acting ethically and listening to the public and trying to do right by our constituents, really.
No, my only comment is that I welcome any feedback on that from anybody, as we all learn our.
Sure.
I'm not so new anymore, but you know what I mean? I'm done being able to use that. But it's a very, I know every time I talk to a parent, I'm like, you know, I'm a problem solver and I have a background, so anytime, and I have to be careful because of that, so. But I agree with all of this, and also just the public knowing what our role is and what it isn't, because sometimes they're looking for us to resolve problems that we really can't, but that we are, and I think you said this, eyes and ears, so we
Yeah.
can pass it on to you, you will now know, so.
And that's
But
what-
this is helpful to look at.
Right, and that's why, for what we were just talking about, anything that we come out with has to be voted on. There's a formal process, everything, but we can informally talk about right now how we are unified, it sounds like, around this, but until we make a vote and everything, it can't, that's just the way the wheel churns on this stuff. The other thing too, on here, I think it's worth noting, is around board versus individuals as we continue to move along here. And we can talk about that a little more with talking about what, you know, how we respond to things. But that's not just email, but that's social media and things like that too. And yeah, drawing the lines there. So we'll go over that in some greater depth. Are there any other comments or questions? If not, I guess I'll start. Can I?
Kelly, I.
Colleen, I.
Allison, I.
Tracy, I.
Great, so that passes 5-0. Okay, so then we have one other policy for this evening. It's DFA investment, and this is also an annual piece. The intent is to provide an opportunity, at least yearly, to consider investments in larger districts that to receive tax dollars in a single transfer. There may be a decision to invest as a means of generating revenue. As identified within the current policy, the school district treasurer, working in conjunction with the superintendent and his/her designee and pursuant to RSA 197-23A, is authorized to invest funds of the district subject to specified objectives and standard care. So that's a little background on that comes with it. I will make a motion to adopt policy DFA investment.
I'll second that.
Thank you. And are there any questions on this?
I'm guessing this doesn't come up often for us.
We haven't used it.
No.
It was really popular when CD rates and those type of short-term things were very high. We might get back there,
Yeah,
But
Okay.
that's what it's intended, but we do it on a yearly basis. But in 9 years, we haven't used it because it's been just the opposite. There's no way to make excess dollars very quickly. Mhm.
Allison and Tracy, I just want to make sure, I've seen this many times,
yeah,
so
no,
are you
cool.
two,
I read
are
it
there
in
questions?
advance.
Okay.
Kind of makes
Okay.
sense.
We're good.
All right. All right, great. So we do this one, we can just do, all those in favor? All right, that passes 5-0. Thank you. And then we have a last piece, which is the 2023-2024 school calendar. We did discuss it, last month, and now we can formally vote. So I will make a motion to approve the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that's on the floor now for conversation.
Actually, in the month of June, the first week is not on there.
Yeah, so I'm not sure why Alyssa has inadvertently deleted a couple of items from June on her version.
I'm
So-
like, the first and second
Those are Saturday,
are
Sunday.
Thursday.
Yeah, the
It's
dates are
Thursday,
off for
Friday. Oh, I'm looking at January.
Oh,
Sorry,
Sorry.
look at January too.
What are you
Okay.
looking
Yep, thanks so much.
Oh, but so, and I noticed this in the meeting last time, and then it was in the packet again like this. June 18th is the last day of school with 5 snow days. So
Okay.
we're really looking at June 11th, and then go out from there with snow days. But for some reason, that didn't make it to this PDF that she put into the packet. But for
June-
Brookline, it's always the day before the last day of school for teachers.
Okay.
So I know we need to approve this, and since we're discussing this, not to be that person, but primary elections, does that need to go on here if it's a potential remote day, or if we did like?
We
school-wide
So we
field
can't
trip
do a
day?
remote day. That's not something we can do in our district.
Okay.
But we don't know a date, so we can't put a date on there. It's always something we can discuss when a date is set, just as we kind of shifted some days this year midstream. We have the flexibility to do that, but,
Okay, I just didn't know if that, I'm new, that was.
no,
my
it's a question that comes up every time.
And have
just-
we, I think at the last minute, we had talked about reaching out to the town of Brookline to find out about alternative polling places for the primary. I know we have March 12th
Yeah.
is town election day, and we have the students not in the building that entire day, which is awesome.
Still working
Okay.
on that. And the other question, just for the board to consider, we now have this space that we've never had, that at least we can isolate everybody in and out. I'm not saying you want, and again, if we don't want to be in the schools, we don't want to be in the schools. I respect that. I'm just saying this is a different space, because if this furniture was moved out for the day, people can enter, it's secured from going upstairs, we can make it even more secure, and exit. Just something to think about. I'm not saying that's the solution. I just know it's very difficult to find polling places.
Yeah.
you know.
Remind them
Or-
to wipe their feet. It's so nice.
I know. I know.
I would,
Or the other,
Target.
well,
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
we get
Tarp,
some
but for
tarp.
real, I'm
Yeah.
like, this is so nice.
the other,
Yeah.
you can always
Everybody has to
approach
put
it.
plastics on their feet.
I was thinking about like those CSI
like,
slippers.
little
Those
booties.
Socks on. Oh, I have,
mean,
yes, I do
could
have
we-
those too.
You can also approach it as a snow day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, because we're gonna have more than enough hours. So, you know, if we're out June 11th, and there hasn't been a lot of snow days, you know, even though we'd be doing it up front, you know, districts have used that because there's more and more concerns about voting.
I think we have time to look at places before we make that choice tonight. I just throw that out there, and I think it's worth acknowledging that the March date is held this year, so appreciate that with our administrators, and I appreciate that with the other two boards, so that we could hold that for Brookline, because that was important, so thank you.
Well, I think isn't it the town who has to make a decision where the polling place is? So can't
No.
we, it's not?
You control the school district. So the town would decide, but you, I mean,
Yes.
I don't want to get into a battle, but there have been towns that have said to, school districts who have said to towns, you can't use our facilities. I don't want to do that,
No.
Right.
you know, because again, small town,
Yeah.
but I mean, we do need to address the concerns, and that's why I say it might be as simple as just saying, we're going to have a snow day,
And if we do make that decision, let's just give our families ample,
ample time.
ample.
So I think we start conversations with the town, and we wait for a date. And when we have a date, we can
So what I
meet
was,
for a
what I
month.
was trying
Or
to say
dates.
is, for March 12th, can we, as a school board, just write a letter to the town school select board saying, we've given our students off March 12th as the school board, can we ask the select board to look for another location other than CSDA?
I think we can ask today for a new location, and I think we should.
Right, because it's not our responsibility to look for another location, right?
And- Right,
So,
and I have a note right on top of my agenda, Tracy, so we'll do that and try to have an
Okay.
update for next month.
right, like, just one less job off our plate. We've done our due diligence, we've done our job to take the day off from school for the kids, so.
Okay, let's put it, we good to vote, to a vote? Okay, all those in favor? 5-0, excellent. Okay, we do have a non-public this evening, so I'll make a motion that the board by roll call go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A32A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, and RSA 91A32C to discuss a matter which discussed in public would likely affect adversely the reputation of a person other than a member of the board, I'm sorry, of the body or agency itself. So I need a second.
I'll make a second.
That was eloquent. Thank you. We do roll call for this. Tracy, we'll start with you. To go into roll call, to go into non-public.
Aye.
There we
Tracy,
go.
aye.
Sorry,
Allison,
I.
aye.
Colleen and I.
Kelly, aye.
And Ken, I. So we are in non-public
We're
at
gonna go right back to
7:46.
the,